He is an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Award-winning musician and the founder of Free America, a campaign to transform America's criminal justice system. His new song is Preach, and he's also releasing a documentary series on YouTube called Can't Just Preach that shares the stories of community leaders and activists. The first episode out now features Sabrina Fulton, the mother of Trayvon Martin. John Legend.
Hello, John.
Welcome back to Pod Save America.
It's good to be back.
So let's start with this. You won an Academy Award for Glory.
Yeah.
Lady Gaga just won an Academy Award for the song Shallow.
Yes.
Have you considered combining forces, capturing that magic, and doing a duet with Bradley Cooper?
A song called Shallow Glory.
Shallow Glory.
That could be cool. That'd be fun.
You and Brad.
Yeah,
at the piano.
I was so impressed with Brad's turn as a singer. You know,
Yeah.
We were at a party together, and he was telling me that he was going to do this film, and I was like, "Oh, you're going to have someone sing for you?" And he looked at me like, "Of course not."
How dare you? How dare you? There is
he was impressive.
There's few things you can rely on more than how many actors just want to be singers and how many singers want to be actors.
I think there's more actors that want to be singers than vice versa, but I think most actors do sing because, you know, there's musical theater, obviously, and if you're in, you know, drama club or whatever in high school, you're probably going to sing some. And so most actors really do sing. Comedians, too. A lot of comedians sing.
Mm-hmm.
John?
I do not sing. I hit puberty and cried on stage during a performance of The Wizard of Oz, and that was it.
All right.
All right. So in your new song, Preach, you talk about turning off your phone because it hurts your chest.
Not literally. It's all metaphorical.
Metaphorically.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people feel addicted to their phones right now and not sure whether they're getting a lot out of it. Do you feel that way?
Well, I think it's back and forth. Sometimes you're like really into it and you want to catch up on the news. You want to listen to Pod Save America or Love It or Leave It.
Sure.
And, you know, there's all this information and entertainment on your phone. And then also it's like sometimes you want to shut it off because there's so much bad news. And if all the news is being aggregated on these sites and on social media, it can feel like a barrage. It's probably not more bad news than there was before, but we just have a place where we can concentrate it all.
Right.
And, you know, it just makes you feel like everything's bad all the time.
So you've actually gotten involved in a pretty significant way around issues like Amendment 4, which was just a big victory in Florida.
Huge victory.
To restore voting rights to people convicted of crimes.
Yes, and our next video in our series features Desmond Meade. And Desmond Meade was the leader of that organization, Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. That was the main driver behind that amendment happening. It's such a huge victory. I think we shouldn't underestimate how important that might be for 2020. Having 1.4 million more eligible voters in the electorate in Florida. And they should have always been there, but I'm glad we made it so that they're able to be there now.
What did you learn from that victory as you're continuing to do works around, say, you know, prosecutors and local district offices?
Well, I think the bottom line, and I think you guys learned it as you were doing your work here in California, trying to flip the House. And I think all of us learned that, you know, we're in a moment right now where we can take advantage of the enthusiasm that we have. We can take advantage of the backlash to Trump's awfulness. We can take advantage of all these things and really mobilize the electorate to make some real change happen. And as frustrating as the news can be, we have reason for optimism because a lot of these things that we fought for in the last few years have actually won, and we see the differences. We see the differences when we watch these hearings on television and we have a House that will actually hold the White House accountable. That is a huge difference, and that's because of organizing. That's because of people running for office that previously might not have. That's because of young people voting at higher rates than they had in the past. All these things happened because we put in the work. And that makes me optimistic. So as much as we get frustrated by the news, as much as we get frustrated by, you know, what seems like a complete shit show in Washington, we have to realize that this work we're putting in is actually paying off.
So what are you watching right now? You know, you've been trying to get people to pay attention to district attorney races. Are there any individual state or local prosecutor races that you're really paying attention to?
Well, I just did a fundraiser for Kim Fox, who's running for re-election in Chicago. She's running for state's attorney in Chicago, and she's been doing a lot of work to hold the office more accountable. Doing a lot more work when it comes to data collection and data analysis. Been really interacting with activists in the community to make sure they're being held accountable. So I think she's great, and we're going to support her again. And then one of the things we're looking at that's not a district attorney's race but is important on a state and local level is the criminal justice bill in New York. We've been speaking with lawmakers there, trying to make sure they do the right thing when it comes to bail reform and other issues that I think will be important for criminal defendants in New York.
All right.
Yeah.
So, you've talked about being inspired by people like Harry Belafonte and Paul Robeson. I think there's a lot of, I think that musicians, actors, celebrities who get involved in activism, sometimes they get a bad rap. Sometimes they deserve a bad rap for not taking it seriously. And yet you are somebody who has established your voice and established some credibility. What have you learned about that, about being somebody who is first primarily known as a performer, trying to sort of prove that you're not just doing this on a lark, that you're actually trying to get involved and use your platform to actually make change?
Well, I think we have to be humble about what we know and what we don't know. And I think we have to be really good at listening to activists, really good at listening to people who are really affected by these issues. So I speak a lot with people who were formerly incarcerated. I speak a lot with people who've been working in the criminal justice reform area for a long time. And so I'm humble about what I know and what I don't know. And I'm also really good about making sure we uplift the people that are really out there doing the work on the ground. And so I feel like my position as someone who has fame and has a platform where a lot of people see what I post or listen to what I sing or listen to what I say, I try to make sure I lift up other people's voices when I have that opportunity to do so. So I think humility is key when celebrities get involved in these things. As much as we are stars, we're famous, we are heard by a lot of people, I think we have to make sure we use our platform, especially in these issues where we're not experts, we have to use our platform to uplift the experts.
So I want to talk about something that's in the news right now. You've said you have no reason not to believe Michael Jackson's accusers in the documentary that just came out. We've grappled with the work of living artists like Woody Allen, like R. Kelly. You've been outspoken about R. Kelly and questions around working with artists like that, enriching artists credibly accused of serious crimes. We're now talking about Michael Jackson, who's gone, right? Yeah. And I think it now becomes a question about the art itself and the music itself.
Yeah, and it's hard, I think, especially with Michael, because his music is irreplaceable. It's not like there's, something like that from that moment that captures that moment in a way that Michael's music does. But I think every individual is probably going to have to grapple with it as a listener, as a consumer, as someone who can decide whether or not to play a certain song in their house or at parties or whatever it is. I think everybody's going to have to decide on their own what's too much for them. And it's hard after you watch that documentary. It gave me a nightmare the first night I watched it. It was just like a really tough thing to watch, and hearing the graphic details of what they were alleging, it was just really difficult. And I think everybody's going to have to decide whether that's too much for them. This art exists, and it was amazing and beautiful, and it still is. Music doesn't stop being amazing. But people have to decide whether they can separate them.
Right. It's I think that the consequences of rewarding artists who have done bad things gets swallowed up in this conversation about the music itself.
Yeah.
But Michael Jackson is gone.
Yeah, and exactly. So he won't profit from you streaming his songs now. And,
right.
I mean, his family will, but it's not their fault. He did what he was alleged to do. And so, people have to decide just, how do you feel? Like,
right.
How does it make you feel to listen to someone if you think they might have done the things that they're accused of? How does it make you feel? And if it's still okay with you, then, I think that's an acceptable thing to think. But, it's going to be tough for some people, I think.
Right. It's almost, at a certain point, long from now, the music will just be the music.
Yeah.
And people won't know about Michael
And
Jackson.
I read a good article that said part of the reason why people feel the need to cancel these artists and mute these artists is because they've gotten away with it in the justice system.
Right.
And if we felt like they had faced any consequences in the justice system, I think we wouldn't feel the need as much to punish them on our own because, we would have felt like they'd had some accountability for their actions. And so the reason why people feel the need to mute people and cancel people and all this stuff is because they feel like that's their only recourse because the justice system has failed to hold them accountable.
But it's also a practical thing too, right? You don't want to give money
Yeah,
to someone who will turn around and use that money to silence people and hurt people.
Absolutely. And if you're giving them money, you're giving them more power to, like you said, silence people and to evade justice.
Let's talk about 2020. We try to not be totally distracted by it. We're focusing on we're focusing on local district attorney races. We're focusing on making sure we win the Senate. We're doing all of that good work. Presupposed. Who do you like?
I really haven't decided, and I'm open. I'm like really going to pay attention to what people are saying, and I genuinely care about how people perform on the stage. I want to see them in debates. I want to see them deal with controversies. I want to see them deal with their past record and how they answer questions about that. And I'm not really going to predict how that'll turn out because I really don't know. I've supported some of these folks for Senate before, like Kamala and Cory Booker and Kirsten Gillibrand and several other folks. Obviously, I supported Obama and Biden, and if Biden runs, I will have supported him in the past. But, I want to see how these folks perform. And I want someone to be progressive, but I want them to be a progressive that can win and that can make an inspiring appeal to the people and can capture the public imagination and all those things that great candidates do. And so we'll see.
So a lot of these candidates have been grappling with parts of their past that are more conservative than where the party is right now.
Yeah.
That's been true of Gillibrand on issues like guns and immigration. It's been true of Booker around Wall Street and pharmaceutical companies. It's true of Kamala on issues around criminal justice reform. It seems to me a lot of what we're seeing right now are candidates trying to prove they're actually as progressive as their platforms.
Yeah, and I think my advice to all of them would be, if you've done some things in the past that you don't agree with now, just explain why.
Yeah.
Explain why you were there then and explain how you've evolved. And I think people just want you to be honest, and they want you to be reflective, and they want you to be inspiring, and they want you to say what you're going to do now. What are you going to do now? What will you fight for now? And I think there's no reason to obfuscate or try to kind of lie about what happened before. Just be honest about where you were and be honest about your progression since then. It's fine. People change, but we want you to be authentic in kind of discussing what led you to change.
Yeah. So before we let you go, can you tell us a little bit about the documentaries that are coming out now?
Yeah.
And why people should be interested in them?
So I think, like we were talking about before, there's a reason for us to be optimistic, and there are people out there doing great work that, as much as we get frustrated with the news, we can be happy about some of these things and see that change can really happen. And so we've been making videos trying to highlight examples of people out there making a difference so that we can inspire more people to do it. And so the series is called Can't Just Preach, and we include several community leaders who all of them have really responded to tragedy. Sabrina Fulton, of course, responded to Trayvon Martin being shot. Desmond Meade responding to his own incarceration and the pain he went through during that time and addiction and all the other things he was dealing with by creating this Florida Rights Restoration Coalition and making amazing change happen in Florida. And we highlight several other people doing the same thing. And then we also connect our viewers and our listeners to opportunities for them to volunteer. So we partnered with Volunteer Match to help people say, if I care about this issue and want to get involved in my community, here's a way for me to do so.
Cool. Last question. We took a photo together.
Yes.
At a fancy party.
Yes,
and
we
I
did.
was repeatedly
Omitted
cropped out
yes.
by the fake news
Yes.
media at
Vanity Fair.
When you saw that I had been cropped out of that
Yes.
photo, how did you feel?
Well, part of me felt your pain because all you saw of me was the back of my head. And I felt bad, you know, that both of us, two JLs who are respected on both sides.
Absolutely.
And we were both really omitted from the core of the photo. And we both deserved better than that. And it didn't reflect the joy of the conversation that we had.
That's what I thought. That was the worst part of it.
Which
It
was
didn't
thrilling.
reflect the joy.
Yes.
That's the whole point of a photo, to capture the joy.
It was our favorite conversation of the night. It was, me, you, DeRay, Ronan, and Chrissy. And we had such a great conversation, and it was just a shame that such tragedy had to come out of that joy.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's a reminder that, like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back
Yeah.
on all of these issues. John Legend, thank you so much for being here. The song is Preach. The documentary series is Can't Just Preach. Check both out. They're both fantastic. Great to have you.
Thank you, John.